timely information and training each month on topics of interest. This is Brendan Burnett, Director of Professional Development and Education Programs. This month we are presenting 5 Sales Secrets of Top Producing Multiline Advisors. With me today is Bill Whitley. He is a nationally recognized speaker and author who specializes in helping insurance agents recruit and develop the best team, close more sales, and deepen account penetration. After doing extensive research, Bill wrote a book called 8 Secrets of the Top Performing Agents, and he has been invited to speak on this topic at hundreds of insurance meetings and sales conferences in the U.S. and Canada. This morning he will share the sales messages that top producers use to attract more clients, communicate the essence of their value, and create lifelong relationships. During the presentation and question and answer session, you may type questions in the question box on the right side of your screen. Questions will be answered during the question and answer session at the end of the program. We're in for a real treat today, and so we'll get started. Let's begin. Bill, I'll turn the discussion to you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Brendan. I'm excited to be here. And as you mentioned, I wrote a book called 8 Secrets of the Top Performing Agents, and I've had the opportunity over the last several years to do extensive research on that topic. I've customized this presentation just for NAIFA members, and so today the presentation is called 5 Sales Secrets of Top Producing Multi-Line Advisors. There's 2 questions that I always like to ask multi-line agents, and I'd like you guys to think about these questions. My first question I always ask is, what's your biggest goal for this year? And when I ask that question, the answers I typically hear are, well, I'd like to sell more financial services, or I want to make sure that I qualify for our incentive travel, or I want to maximize my bonus. So I hope those goals are in line with the goals you have for your agency. And then the second question I like to ask is, what is your biggest challenge that gets in the way of achieving those goals? And I almost always hear the exact same answer. The answer I hear is that recruiting and developing and retaining a great team is the biggest challenge. And so if those are your goals and that's your biggest challenge, I think you'll really enjoy the presentation today. When I did my research on the top multi-line advisors, what I really wanted to know were, how do the top advisors position themselves? How do they differentiate themselves? How do they communicate their value? How do they create lifelong relationships? So what I was really looking for were the questions and the conversations and the comments and the stories these top advisors share, and I can't wait to share those with you today. There's a couple of underlying themes that I noticed before we dive into the presentation. One is that the top advisors have all made this transition from quoting price to advising clients on the most effective way to protect everything they own. And I'm excited to share some of the comments they make to make that transition. The second thing I noticed is that these top advisors are very well practiced. They practice the questions, the comments, the conversations, and my goal today is to get you so excited about some of these conversations that you'll want to practice them and make them part of your everyday agency operation. So let's get started. 5 sales secrets of top producing multi-line advisors. Secret number 1 is that early in the conversation, the top multi-line advisors position themselves as someone who can help manage everyday risk. So let's suppose that I'm an agent and Brendan calls me. And he says, Bill, I'd like an auto quote. Now what Brendan is really saying is, Bill, I've seen all the ads, yours and everybody else's, and I want to save money on my auto insurance. And the typical agent says, sure, Brendan, I'll be happy to get you a quote. What kind of car do you have? And that's all they do. They just quote. They add no value. They just quote. Well, your top agents are fundamentally different. If Brendan called a top agent, they'd say, sure, Brendan, I'd be delighted to help you out with that. Let me ask you a few questions. And the number 1 question these top agents ask is so simple. So, Brendan, how did you hear about us? And to the decimal point, the top agents can tell you exactly what made the phone ring. Question number 2, so Brendan, how many cars do you own? Maybe Brendan's married, and he says, well, my wife and I both have a car. And I said, great, Brendan, do you and your wife own your home? And he says, yeah, we own our home. Last question, Brendan, do you and your wife have investments or, have savings? And about the time I asked question number 4, Brendan says, Bill, come on. All I want to do is save a little money on my auto insurance. I don't know why you're probing around about all of that. And the top agents all said this differently. But the gist of what every single one of them said was, Brendan, here's the deal. If the only thing you want is cheap insurance, you could probably get it cheaper from somebody else. But I can tell you and your wife have been successful. You've accumulated some wealth. If you'd like me to take a look at everything you own and recommend the most effective way to protect it, then I'm your guy. And by the way, if we write multiple lines for you, both of your cars and your home, we're allowed to offer you a multi-line discount. So ultimately, we'll save you money on your auto insurance, but you need to think of us as someone who can help you manage your everyday risk. And then they ask a brilliant question. They simply say, is that of interest to you? So if you want to make the transition from quoter to advisor, the first thing I recommend you master are your opening questions and your positioning comments. And by the way, I've developed a team training package, and every question and comment and conversation that I'm going to share with you today is in this package. The package in the middle with the red logo is an audio CD. It's a live recording of my entire presentation. I encourage people to put it in your car and listen to it 2, 3, 4, 5 times. Really let the content sink in. The package on the left in the blue is a DVD. It's perfect. It has 8 videos. It's perfect for staff training sessions. And then on the right is my book, 8 Secrets. It has every word track that I'm going to share with you today. So secret number 2, the top multi-line advisors and their team members consistently share the right stories. And it's interesting, when I ask people what they do, most people talk about their products and services. But when I did my research, the top multi-line advisors were very quick to share examples of how their clients benefited from having the right insurance. And I call these examples client attraction stories. They follow a simple formula. A client attraction story is simply a story about a client that had a challenge where your insight or advice helped them avoid difficulty, and they got great results. So I'd like to share one of my favorite stories with you. When I did my original research, one of the agents I interviewed was an agent named Mike Williamson. And I asked all the agents the same questions, and one of the questions I asked was, tell me what you do. And when I asked Mike, I said, tell me what you do, he simply said, Bill, I help clients manage everyday risk. And I said, great, what's that mean? And he said, well, just as an example, one of our clients is a college professor. He's a nice guy, smart guy, and he was driving home from work one day, and it started to rain. He pulled up to a stoplight. He was going to make a right on red, and so he looked left, and there was no oncoming traffic. And just as he went to make that right turn, a guy was running across the street trying to get out of the rain. And my client never saw him. And he hit him with his car, and $900,000 later, the last medical bill was paid. And it was an accident. He didn't intentionally try to hit the guy, but he was held liable. And fortunately, 1 year before that accident, we recommended that he buy a $1 million personal umbrella policy. And there's not a time that he sees me that he doesn't come up and thank me for selling him that policy. And then Mike said, by the way, had he not put that policy in place, a typical chain of events would have occurred. First, he would have exhausted all of his savings trying to pay off that guy's medical bills, and then he would have gone into debt, and then he would have declared bankruptcy. But because he had that one policy in place, there was no financial impact at all. So what a powerful story. And I'd like to share just a little bit more about these stories and how powerful they can be for you and your agency. A couple years ago, I was invited to do a workshop for staff. I was down in South Haven, Mississippi. I did 2 workshops, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. One of the attendees, one of the team members that came, was a young lady named Brandy Bell. Brandy's 27 and had been working for the Garnet West agency for 7 months. So she came to the workshop, and then she emailed the organizer of the workshop the day after. So this was less than 24 hours later, and she emailed Deb West. And she said, Deb, I just want to let you know how much I liked Bill's seminar yesterday. Thanks for having him come to our meeting. She said, I timidly tried out the professor story after a guy called in this morning and wanted a quote on homeowners. He said we were the last ones he was going to call. He said his existing insurance company had gone up $600 a year, and he had no claims. And I asked him if price was the most important thing to him, and he said at this point, yes. So we talked, and I told him we're a little different from other companies. We help clients manage their everyday risk. And he said, what's that mean? And I shared the professor example. She shared an example of what a good risk manager does. And he said, well, how much does that cost? And I quoted him an umbrella. And he said, hey, Brandy, when you insure my home, I want to go ahead and get that too. So Deb forwarded this email to me the day after, and when I saw this email, I wanted to hop on a plane. I was so excited I wanted to go back to South Haven, Mississippi and hug Brandy Bell. If you think about it, she took a single line, price-driven transaction that her agent would have lost, and she turned it into a multi-line relationship that they won, and she did it with 14 words. We're a little different from other companies. We help clients manage their everyday risk, secret number one. Now, by the way, no one knows what everyday risk is. So if you say to someone, I help people manage everyday risk, there's only one possible response, and that is, what's that mean? And now you have permission to share an example of what a good risk manager does. And so Brandy Bell then shared the example, and forever, that prospective client, he viewed risk and the role of a risk advisor in a very different way. So there's three really powerful communication tools that I want to share with you today, and the first one is story. Story is such a powerful way to communicate. It makes your content easy to understand. It makes it easy to remember. And so my question for you is, are you and your team fully harnessing the power of story within your agency? And I find that most agencies have some stories. They just don't fully harness the power of story. So I'd like to give you a little bit of background into storytelling to help you fully harness the power of story. The first thing I want to share is this simple little formula. I call it position, prove, and dismount. And so if you think about the question I asked Mike Williams, and I said, Mike, what do you do? And he said, well, I help people manage everyday risk. And that's a great positioning comment. Anybody could say that. And then when I said, well, what do you mean by that? He then proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that he could indeed help me manage everyday risk. He shared an example of what a good risk manager does. And at the end of that conversation, all you have to do is dismount by saying, so, Bill, that's what I do. And I'll be happy to do the same thing for you. I'll be happy to understand your complete situation and recommend the most effective way to protect everything you own. Would you like me to do that for you? So if you'll just keep that simple formula in mind, position and prove and dismount, it'll help you more fully harness the power of story. The second thing I'd like to share is how to organize your story so it has its maximum impact. And I want to go on record as saying, I don't want you to say anything that's not true. The truth will set you free. But I would like to share how to organize your story so that it has its maximum impact. And the great stories all follow a model called the hero's journey. You've known the hero's journey since you were a child, and you heard your first good bedtime story. It sounded something like this. Once upon a time, there was a hero who had reason to go on a journey where he, she, or it met a huge challenge to which there was a hero-inspired way out, and he, she, or it returned home safely. That is the classic plot flow, and I suggest you use that simple model as you develop your client attraction stories. So in the story you just heard, the first thing you want to do in a client attraction story is introduce us to the hero of the story. And by the way, your client, a client attraction story, the client is the hero. You're not the hero. It's the client. And so Mike Williamson did it beautifully. He said, one of my clients is a college professor. Nice guy, smart guy. And with that 3-second description, we now understand exactly who the hero of the story is. Maybe it's a very different story, and he could say, you know, one of my clients taught school for 42 years, and she was getting ready to retire. Now we have a very different hero. There's a one-word description that I hear insurance agents use a lot. They'll say, I have an insured who is driving home from work. And my question is, well, who is an insured? Are they male or female? Are they old or young? And what's an insured do? You know, are they police officers or doctors or accountants? You know, what do they do? So I would replace the word insured, just a 2 or 3 second description of who that hero is. That sets the context and makes your story easy to understand. The next part of your story is called journey. Now in a client attraction story, journey is simply the client's goal, Maybe your client wants to retire. Maybe they want to put their kids through college. Maybe they got a lot of nice stuff and they want to protect that lifestyle. Now in this story, Journey was very simple. He said he was driving home from work. His goal was just to get home safely. Step 3 is obstacle. He said he made his right turn and he never saw the guy and he hit him with his car and $900,000, the last medical bill, was paid. Step 4 is solution, and he said fortunately 1 year before that accident we recommended he buy a $1 million personal umbrella policy. And then step 5 is results. As Paul Harvey used to say, now the rest of the story. And he said, by the way, had he not put that policy in place, a typical chain of events would have occurred. So if you'll just think about those 5 key parts, it'll help you organize a much more powerful client attraction story. And once you've developed your stories, then you can share them with your team and make sure that everybody can share those key stories just as well as you can. So if you want to make that transition from quoter to advisor, the second thing I encourage you to master is your client attraction stories. And by the way, in my training package, I'll teach you exactly how to create your unique client attraction story. And the appendix of my book, I have my 10 favorite multi-line client attraction stories. So the next thing I want to mention, these stories are a very powerful way to communicate your value to clients. You know, Brandy Bell, when that guy called in for the quote on homeowners, you know, she was able to share a client attraction story and a positioning comment. It's a very powerful way to communicate to clients. But I want you to also think about these stories are a great way to attract brand new clients. So secret number 3, the top multi-line advisors and their team members have something I call a customer attraction conversation. And the question I'd like you to think about for just a second is, how many times per week, you know, you're away from the office, how many times per week do you get asked the what do you do question? You know, you're on the side of a soccer field watching the kids play soccer, you're at a cocktail party, or you know, the networking event, wherever you are, and somebody says, what do you do? And the typical answer that I hear is 5. You know, on an average week, some weeks more, some weeks less, but typical week, about 5 times per week you're asked that question. So if I gave you 2 weeks off for vacation, just to make the math simple, that would be 50 weeks left in the year. That means you're being asked that question about 250 times per year. And if you have 3 team members, that means between you and your 3 team members, about 1,000 times a year, somebody's asking you or one of your staff, so what do you do? And I always like to ask, can anyone tell me the most popular response? If you're a multi-line agent and I meet you on the side of a soccer field and I say, so what do you do? Can anybody tell me the most popular response? Well, the most popular response that I hear is, I sell insurance. The second most popular response, I'm an insurance agent. Now, those are good responses. They're very short and sweet. My only problem with that is that I've already got that. You know, if I'm driving a car, by law, I have to have auto insurance, and if I've got a mortgage, I've got homeowners insurance. So if you say I sell insurance, or you know, I'm an insurance agent, I'm going to think, I've already got that, and so I'm going to commoditize you. We're going to have a nice conversation. I just think it's very rare that I'm going to say, really? Tell me more. And I'll say, oh, that's great. Tell me about your kids. You know, where do you live? So along came the concept of an elevator speech. And I always ask my audience, how long should a good elevator speech be? And somebody usually says 30 seconds. So I'd like you to think about this for just a second. Let's suppose that I meet Brendan on the side of a soccer field and say, Brendan, what do you do? And he hits me with a 30-second elevator speech. If he started talking right now, he'd be talking, he'd be talking, he'd be talking, still talking. 5 seconds. Way to go, Brendan. Keep it going. He's still talking. 10 seconds. All right, Brendan, a third of the way there. Keep it going. 15 seconds. All right, Brendan, you're halfway there. Keep talking, keep talking. 20 seconds. He's still talking. All right, here comes the big finale. 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. So my only point is that when you meet someone new, 30 seconds is like an eternity. Here's the other interesting thing I've noticed. I've never heard one. I've never been on the side of a soccer field or at a cocktail party and asked anyone what they do. I've never heard a 30-second speech. I think it would be incredibly difficult to sound authentic and deliver a 30-second speech. So I want to suggest a much easier approach. I call it an attraction conversation. So let's flip it around, and Brendan meets me on the side of a soccer field. He says, so Bill, what do you do? I'd say, well, I help people manage everyday risk. And I wouldn't say another word. And what's the most logical response to that? And the most logical response to that is, well, what's that mean? And I'd say, oh, well, I'm an insurance agent, but what I really do is help people avoid the two biggest financial mistakes that most people make. And I wouldn't say another word. And what's the most logical response to that? The most logical response to that is, well, what are they? And I say, oh, Brendan, the biggest mistake is just not protecting against everyday risk. For example, one of my customers is a college professor. Nice guy, smart guy, and he was driving home from work, and it started to rain. And I believe if Brendan's asked me question 1 and question 2 and question 3, he has just given me permission to share an example of what a good risk manager does. And 1,000 times per year, me and my team now have permission to share a story that positions us as this thoughtful, helpful advisor. So it's almost like planting seeds, 1,000 per year. And what's the cost of that? The cost, of course, is zero. It doesn't cost a dime to share an example, to share a client attraction story. So the third thing I hope you'll master is your client attraction conversation. So I mentioned the 3 most powerful communication tools, and the first is story, the second is passion, and the third is simplicity. And so my second question for you is, are you and your team fully harnessing the power of passion within your agency? It speaks so much louder than anything you say. And so secret number 4, the top multi-line advisors and their team members have this thing I call authentic enthusiasm. It's nothing you can control. It just wells up inside of you and comes out. And I like to explain it like this. I believe that I'm in a lifeboat, and I've got life jackets, and my prospects and my customers are out there in the water, and I am throwing them life jackets as fast as I can. And some of my prospects and clients will take a life jacket, and some of them won't. And to be honest with you, I don't feel rejected if they won't take a life jacket. I kind of feel sorry for them. And so here's how it works. When you have a good client attraction story, every time you share it, it reminds you of your value. It builds your self-belief. Every time Mike Williamson shares that story, he's reminded of the fact that because of him, that college professor avoided financial devastation. And this thing wells up inside of you that I call authentic enthusiasm. It's nothing you can control. It just comes out. And then finally, you become what I refer to as a customer advocate. You are no longer selling. You're just helping. And that's the most powerful position in sales. So if you'd like to get in the lifeboat and stay in the lifeboat, I strongly encourage you to develop some good client attraction stories and then share them over and over and over. He could sell ice to Eskimos. That's always meant as a compliment for a really good salesperson. But if you think about it, nothing could be further from the truth. If you're selling ice to Eskimos, you're selling something to someone who doesn't want or need it. They'll never thank you. They'll never have a high-trust, high-value relationship if you're selling ice to Eskimos. So I'm starting a movement. I call it the No Ice for Eskimo movement. And I printed up these little posters. They're available on my website, billwhitley.com. I encourage you to get one and frame it and hang it on your wall. And when a client sees it, they'll kind of laugh and say, "What's that?" And you can say, "Oh, at this agency, we never sell ice to Eskimos. We would much rather understand your complete situation and recommend the most effective way to protect everything you own. Would you like us to do that for you?" So if you'd like to join me in the movement, get a poster, and have some fun. And with that, we're going to change directions. So far, we've been talking about how to attract more clients. Now we've got the clients. Now it's time to develop a deeper multi-line relationship with our existing clients. So secret number 5, the top multi-line advisors make everyday risk easy to understand. And I mentioned the 3 most powerful communication tools, story and passion and simplicity. So my third question is, are you and your team fully harnessing the power of simplicity within your agency? And my experience is that if you can make something simple and visual and easy to understand, your client will thank you, and in many cases, they will only buy from you. So I'd like to share with you what I think simplicity would look like in your agency. Let's suppose that I'm your client, and you call me on the phone. You've insured both my cars for the last 2 years and my home, and you call me and say, Bill, I'd like to create a diagram for you. I call it Your World. It'll give you a good picture of your financial situation and any risks that you might face. And I'd say, can't we just do it over the phone? And you'd say, you know, Bill, it's a diagram. It's visual. I think you'd get a lot more benefit if we met face-to-face. And this is not a sales call. Don't bring your checkbook. I'm just really calling you to make you aware this is a service I offer my best customers. I just wanted to make you aware and invite you to come in. Now, when I come into your office, or you could come to me. When I come to your office, you could pull out a blank piece of paper, or you could do this on a white dry erase marker board, and you could say, Bill, here is your world, and here's you, and you're the center of your world, and everybody loves you because you create income. So tell me a little bit more about what you do for a living. And I'd say, well, you know, I'm a speaker and an author, and I travel all over the country doing these presentations. And you say, how long have you been doing that? And I say, well, I've been doing it about 7 years now. And does your wife work outside the home? And I said, no, it's just me. And so to the right of income, you'd write some of those details, you know, speaker, author, you know, single income. Then you could say, Bill, your income goes in one of two directions. It either goes to support your family or purchase assets. So tell me about your family. And I'd say, well, there's me and my wife, Leanne. We've been married for 27 years, and we've got 3 children, Will and Maggie and John. Will's just turned 21, and Maggie's 19, and John's 15. And both of my parents are still alive. My dad just turned 83, and both of my wife's parents are still alive, and they're in their late 70s. And then you could say, great, now tell me about your assets. You know, I know there's the 2 cars that we insure in the home. And say, yeah, you know, I've got the Lexus, and my wife drives the Honda Pilot, and you insure them both. And I live at 814 Berkeley Avenue, and, you know, I think my home's worth $500,000, and I've got about a $300,000 mortgage, and I've got a stock portfolio, and I've got an IRA that I've been working on. Now, here are the 6 most important words you could say. If you could understand my income, my family, and my assets, and then just simply say, Bill, here's what I heard you say. I heard you say you're a sales trainer, and you travel all over the country doing these presentations, and your wife doesn't work outside the home, and there's you and your wife, Leanne, married 27 years, 3 children, Will, Maggie, John. Will's 21, Maggie's 19, John's 15. If you could understand my income and my family and my assets, and then summarize it back for me, I'm going to view you in a very different way. I'm going to view you as much more of an advisor. And here's the sad truth. The sad truth is that most salespeople listen with the intent to sell. So the minute they notice an opportunity, they're ready to pounce. But you never pounced. You just said, tell me what you do, and tell me about your family, and tell me about your assets, and, you know, here's what I heard you say. And then you could say the second set of magic words, which is, did I miss anything? I'd say, no, that's it. That's my world. And now you can go to a second level of discovery, but trust me, this is still discovery. So you could draw, you say, you know, Bill, as the person who helps you manage everyday risk, I think about 7 things, the 7 biggest risks that we all face. And the first thing I think about is your health. So you write the word health and put it in a little box, and you say, you know, Bill, if you had a major medical procedure, it could cost a lot of money. I don't want anything to erode that investment portfolio you just told me about. So tell me about your health care coverage. And I'd say, well, you know, I've got Blue Cross Blue Shield. I've got an HSA. I spend about $1,200 a month. And you write that under the health box. Blue Cross Blue Shield, HSA, $1,200 a month. And then you could say, you know, Bill, the next thing I think about is your income. You mentioned you're a sales trainer. You travel all over the country doing these presentations. If you couldn't travel around and do those presentations, is your world okay? If not, we should be talking about disability income. And the next thing I think about is if something happened to you permanently. You know, if something happened to you permanently, is your world okay? If not, we should be talking about life insurance. And then the next thing I think about is just the opposite. If you live a really long time, is it possible that you could outlive your assets? And I call that a longevity risk. So the next thing I'd like to talk with you about, I want to make sure that you never outlive your assets. And I'm just delighted that we've been insuring that home of yours for the last 2 years, and we insure both of your cars. And last question, if you or Leanne caused an accident and there was a lawsuit, just like the college professor that I told you about, or it could be Will or Maggie, if one of you guys had an accident and there was a lawsuit and you were sued for $1 million, is your world okay? If not, we should be talking about a personal umbrella policy. And then I coach the agents, just all you have to do now is draw a wall of protection around my world, and just simply close by saying, you know, Bill, my goal is to build a wall of protection around your world so that if any of those accidents happen, they'll just bounce right off. And obviously, we are not going to build that wall today. So my only question for you is, which of those risks concern you the most, and where would you like me to start? And what's fascinating about this conversation is if you do it well, the very first thing a customer will say is thank you. Nobody ever made insurance that easy to understand. And the second thing the client will say is, can I have a copy of that diagram? And I'd say, absolutely. And I'd go to the copy machine, I'd make a copy, but I'd scan it in, I would keep a copy, I'd make it part of your permanent client record. By the way, the most likely purchase, if you take a client through that conversation, is an umbrella policy, followed closely by a life insurance policy. So if one of your goals was to sell more financial services, I strongly encourage you and your team to master that conversation and let your client say thank you and have a copy of the diagram, and in many cases they'll want an umbrella and a life policy as well as other things as well. So the question I'm always asked is, what's the best way to get people to come in for a Your World presentation? Everybody just wants to talk to me over the phone. So I'd like to share 3 great ideas that came from some of the agents that I work with. One of the agents that I work with is Edwin Young, and he said, Bill, he's up in Cincinnati, Ohio, and he said, we're going up about $600 a year on everybody's homeowner coverage, and every one of my clients is ticked off. So we have an appointment setting company that calls every one of our homeowners 1 week after they receive their bill. And our appointment setting company says, we know you received a bill last week, and Mr. Young wanted me to give you a call and invite you to spend 40 to 55 minutes to go over the things that are taking place in your world, as well as to make sure you're getting all the discounts possible that you and your family should be receiving. When would be a great time to come in? And Edwin tells me that they set 12 to 18 appointments per month. So that's a great way to get more of your existing clients to come in. And let's suppose you've got brand new clients. Adam Lee is a financial services associate based here in Charlotte, North Carolina. He says that every time a team member finishes up a quote, they're required to say, I've got everything I need to get this wrapped up. And we don't need to meet with you today, but we do need to meet with you. And you'll be meeting with Adam. He's got availability on Tuesday afternoon or Thursday morning. Which one works best for you? Adam tells me that 50% of the people they make that offer to come in for a Your World conversation. And idea number 3, I've developed some signage. I've had agents who said, I'd like to have a picture of the Your World conversation or a little placard or maybe a postcard. And again, those are all available on my website, billwhitley.com. So I want to wrap up today by reminding you that ideas alone are not valuable. It's when you implement the idea that it becomes truly valuable. And so there's 5 critical steps, and this is a summary of everything we just learned. If you'd like to master the positioning and the Your World conversation, the very first step is to position yourself as an advisor. And my favorite way to do that is just by saying, we're a little different from other agencies. We help clients manage their risk. Now, when you make that comment, the client will always say, what do you mean manage risk? And then you can share your best client attraction story. You can say, well, for example, just share an example of how you helped a client avoid financial difficulty. And then you can set the meeting by saying, just dismount and say, so, that's a good example of what I do. And by the way, I'll be happy to do the same thing for you. I'll be happy to understand your complete situation and recommend the most effective way to protect everything you own. Would you like me to do that for you? And then set up a face-to-face meeting, have a Your World conversation. You can go to them or they can come to you. Now, the key thing to know, and why this has become so powerful for multi-line advisors, is 99% of the time the client's going to say thank you. And when a client says thank you, it means they're thanking you because you've created value. And when they say thank you, you can say, oh, you're welcome. You know, that's what we do here at the Bill Whitley Agency. And by the way, I'll be happy to have the exact same conversation with anyone you know that could benefit from this. And then just pause for a second and say, Brendan, do you have friends or family I should be sharing this with? And I'm told that if you master the conversation, the client will now give you 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 names of clients, of friends that you should be calling on. And so you get those introductions, and then the whole process starts over. You position yourself as an advisor and share stories and set the meeting. So the Your World conversation is a really powerful way to understand your client better, to educate them about the 7 biggest risks, teach them how to build a wall of protection, help them build that wall, and as they have that experience, they will gladly, it's such a loving conversation, they will gladly introduce you to their friends and family. So if you'd like to master the concepts that I just taught, as I mentioned earlier, I have a team training package. It's an ideal way to master these concepts and teach them to your team and make them part of your agency. I'm also very excited to tell you that I've recently set up something I'm calling the 8 Secrets Mastermind group. And for years, I would do these presentations, and I'd be in the back of the room signing books, and an agent would walk by and say, Bill, that was a great presentation. I want to buy your book and your tape and your DVD. And then they'd say, who can I talk to that's already implemented these ideas? And I'd say, oh, talk to Joe or talk to Sue. So it was always informal. But to make it even more valuable for the agents, I'm now conducting interviews with the top 1 to 2% of the agents in the country. And I take these interviews and record them and put them on audio CD. And then we have the CD transcribed. I call that the 8 Secrets the Agency Growth Ideas Report. And I always say, I don't want any of your office time. I know you're busy. I just want some of your windshield time. I want you to put these CDs into your car and listen to them 2, 3, 4, 5 times. And as you get these ideas, we'll also have that written report, so you'll have everything at your fingertips. And just to give you an example of some of the things I'm learning from these interviews. So in the first interview was with Larry Hutto. He's the best. He's an agent down in Lexington, South Carolina. He's the very best at the Your World conversation I've ever seen. And I say, so Larry, how do you get more people to come in? And then once they come in, what do you say to them? And how do you transition to the diagram? And then he walks you through his complete conversation, and it is pristine. It is beautiful. At the end of the interview, I say, so Larry, is there anything that you'd like to share with the mastermind group that I didn't ask you about? And he says, yeah. He says, let me tell you something, Bill. If you do this diagram enough, you start to feel like you are a risk manager. And I tell people all the time, hey, the only thing you want is cheap insurance. I'm probably not your guy. I'm here to help you manage your risk. And would you like me to do that for you? On this first interview, I also talked with an agent named Sherry LaReger. She's a Farm Bureau agent from Fremont, Nebraska. She heard me speak at a NAIFA conference, and she said, Bill, I love the Your World conversation. I've been using it for the last 6 months, and my clients like it so well that I'm now using it for outreach. And I said, what do you mean outreach? And she said, well, you know, my clients like it so well that I'm now calling accountants and attorneys and real estate agents and mortgage brokers. And I'm just saying, hey, my name's Sherry LaReger. I'm your local Farm Bureau agent. I was wondering if I could buy you lunch or breakfast and share with you how I help clients manage their risk. And she says, the professional almost always says, sure, I'll eat lunch with you. And she says, once she takes them to lunch, she pulls out a blank piece of paper. And she says, if you don't mind, I'd like to treat you like a customer. And she says, here's you. You're the center of your world. Everybody loves you because you create income, and that income either goes to support your family or purchase assets. So tell me about your family. And she literally creates the diagram for them right there at lunch. And she said almost every time she does it with a professional, the professional says, Sherry, I don't think anyone is having this level of conversation with my clients. I will be happy to refer them to you. So she's building the most amazing referral network I've ever seen. And one of the other interviews, I interviewed Peyton Pettis. Peyton has developed a recruiting and training machine. He has 7 agents that aspire to become agents, or 7 team members that aspire to become agents. And so he walks through his exact recruiting process and how they screen and the questions they ask and how they determine which would be the best candidates. And then he talks about how we train for optimal performance. And then the third interview was with Craig Loftus. And Craig is just brilliant at setting goals. And he said, my one goal is to make Chairman's Circle, which is the highest level of travel incentive in his organization. And he said, I said, so Craig, what's your goal? And he said, well, that's the one goal. And he said, by the way, I have 8 full-time team members. You can ask any one of them what our goal is, and they'll tell you that's the goal. And they can tell you exactly where we are to date and what we have left to do to achieve that goal. And Craig teaches you how to set compensation and keep team members on track. And one of the brilliant things Craig does, he has this big dry erase marker board. He calls it his tracker board. And he says, when you become an employee of this agency, you pick a color. Some people like orange, some people like red, some like blue. And whenever you make a sale, you walk into our production room and you write that sale up in your color. And he said, we review the previous week's sales every Monday. And he said a brilliant thing. He said, you can't hide from the scoreboard. You know, if you're red and there's not much red up there, somebody's going to say, hey, Bill, what happened to you last week? Were you on vacation? So I have a special offer for everybody who attended the presentation today. My 8 Secrets Mastermind group is only $49 a month. There's no contract. You can stay as long as you want or as short as you want. And for anyone who will test drive our Mastermind group for at least 1 month, I'll actually send you a team training package for free as my gift. And then I have one additional bonus. For the first 25 agents that sign up today, I'll actually conduct a live training class just for you and your team. So you get the team training package for $97. The Mastermind group is $49 a month. There's no contract. Stay as long as you want or as short as you want. And you also get a live training class for just you and your team. So a $441 value for just $49. And if anybody would like to take advantage of that offer, my program manager's name is Beth. Just email her. She's beth@billwhitley.com, or you're welcome to call her. Her phone number is 704-612-0122, and she's extension 2. So, Brendan, thank you for the opportunity to present today. I want to open it up for questions, and I'll leave Beth's email and phone number up there. But I'd love to hear if anyone has a question. I'd be delighted to answer any questions.
Well, thank you, Bill, and I want to remind our participants today that if you'd like to ask a question, you can simply type your question into the question box on the right side of your screen. We're going to get started with the first question. We have love expressed for the Your World conversation, Bill, and the question about the Your World conversation, is this something that you recommend that agents, advisors use for affluent clients or for all clients?
Well, that's a great question, and so thank you for asking. I'd like to answer that question in 2 ways. And the first quick answer is, I think every client deserves to understand the 7 biggest risks that we all face. And I think every client deserves to understand how to build a wall of protection. Now, with that said, if I were you, I would take my top 10% of my households. Most agents I talk to have 2,000 households or 3,000 households. So I'd take that top 200 or 300 clients, and I would call them first. And I would invite them to come in for a Your World conversation, or I'd go to them. And the key thing is with those clients is that almost every single one of them is going to say thank you. Nobody ever made insurance that easy to understand, and they're going to say, can I have a copy of the diagram? And when they say thank you, you can say, oh, you're welcome. It's what we do here at the Bill Whitley Agency. And by the way, I'll be happy to have that exact same conversation with anyone you know that could benefit from this. And then just pause for a second and say, do you have friends or family I should be sharing this with? Now, when those affluent clients, your top 200 to 300 of your book, when they say thank you and introduce you to their friends, the friends they introduce you to are just as affluent as they are. And so it's a really wonderful way to serve your best clients and then develop a very affluent book of business. So I think everybody deserves it, but I would at least start with my best clients.
Okay, also in terms of the Your World conversation, Is this something that could be used or maybe adaptable to Rotary presentation, Lions Club presentation, that sort of thing?
Absolutely, and I'll make a second offer. That little slide that I clicked through that had the income, for anyone who signs up for the Mastermind group, I'll tell Beth to send them that slide. And you could just click through the same thing at a Rotary presentation. You could start off and say, my job is to help me, I'm an insurance agent, or I'm a Multiline agent, but my real job is to help clients manage their risk, and I'd like to show you what that looks like. Whenever I talk with a client, the first thing I want to understand is their income. And I say, your income either goes to support your family or purchase assets. So tell me about your family, and you could type in your family name and tell me about your assets. And then I teach them that there's 7 risks that we all face, and I teach them how to build a wall of protection. And I believe if you had that presentation and you went to a Rotary Club and presented it, I think it's very likely that several people would get up after the presentation, hand you their business card, and say, my agent's never done that for me. I'd like to come meet with you. I'd like you to have that conversation with me. And so, again, for anybody that will sign up for the Mastermind group and at least test drive it for at least 1 month, I'll be happy to have Beth include my Your World PowerPoint slide that you can customize and use for Rotary or use any way you'd like within your agency.
Thanks, Bill. The next question, a little bit of housekeeping concerning the special offer. The question is about the email address. Is it correctly Beth at Bill Whitley or Wiltley?
That's terrible. I can't spell my own name. Let me fix that. Thank you for catching that, Whitley. Yep, so it's Beth at BillWhittley.com. Sorry about that.
Excellent. All right, the next question is, how would you rework this presentation for a financial service, life, and investment agent?
A great question. I think a very similar version of this would work really well for a financial advisor or an investment advisor. And the only thing I would do differently is I would start off and I'd say, your income goes in one of 3 directions. It either goes to pay taxes or support your family or purchase assets. And my goal as your advisor is to help you minimize your taxes and support your family or protect your family and protect your assets. And so I think you'd want to add that third box to it and talk about tax saving strategies as well.
All right, our next question reads, great webinar, thanks. What's the best way to respond to someone who insists that I just want a quote or just tell me about your products?
Yeah, and I think if somebody's really insistent, you don't want to make anybody mad. I think I would say, I will be delighted to get your quote. I just want to let you know that at this agency we're a little different. We help clients manage their everyday risk. And if you ever want me to show you how to manage your risk most effectively, I'll be happy to do that for you. Most of my clients, when I do that for them, they say thank you, and they really appreciate that. So just wanted to make you aware of that. But since all you want today is a quote, let me go ahead. I don't want to waste your time. Let me get you a quote.
And as a follow-up, I assume that there would be other opportunities in the future once you've complied with the client's wishes and just given them the quote to go ahead and move beyond that.
Absolutely. And I think you could at least pique their interest by saying, it's a service we offer our best customers. Just wanted you to make sure it's aware it's available. Not a sales call. Let me get you that quote today. But whenever you have some time, I think you'd really benefit by letting me explain to you that the 7 greatest risks that we all face and the most effective way to protect everything you own.
Our next question reads, I am an independent agent. What training guide would you recommend since I do not have a team?
I think the most powerful product is that audio CD. So if you're only going to buy one product, on my website, BillWhittley.com, you can buy the audio CD. It sells for $40, and I encourage people to put it in their car and listen to it 2, 3, 4, 5 times and just let those word tracks sink in. I don't want any of your office time. I just want some of your windshield time. And if you'll listen to it over and over and over, I think you'll really start to master some of these conversations. And then I think the Mastermind group is a wonderful way to go. It's when TV first came out, it was referred to as broadcasting. And when the Internet first came out, I heard the term narrowcasting. You know, for the first time, you could create content and send it out to a very narrow niche. And that's what the Mastermind group really is. It's a narrowcast program. It's available, or it's designed just for multi-line agents, and it's a chance for you to hear from the very best in the country and hear what they're doing and how they're doing it. And again, I don't want any of your office time. I just want your windshield time. And I'm excited. I'm getting more take-up on these ideas than I've ever gotten before because of the Mastermind group. When you hear these top agents and you hear some of the comments they make, it'll almost give you goosebumps when you hear some of the comments they make. And I just found it's very inspirational. In addition to being educational, it's inspirational, and I think it'll really give you strong incentive to make some of those changes within your agency.
Bill, I believe that you have just answered our next question in the comments you just made, but just in case you wanted to add anything else, the question is, can you please explain the function of the Mastermind group?
Yeah, and so in the Mastermind group, somebody always says, you know, I don't have time to participate in a Mastermind group. And so we've designed this a little differently. I'm conducting the interviews, I'm recording the interviews, and I'm putting them on audio CD. And the interviews are pretty tough interviews. I'm saying, tell me about your agency, and what are your biggest goals for this year, and what are your biggest challenges, and how do you overcome those challenges, and could you give me an example of that? And you know, congratulations, you're one of the best in the country. You know, what have you done to get to that level? And could you give me an example of that? So these interviews are very specific, and we put them on audio CD. I encourage you to put the CD in your car, listen to it several times, and then every single month in your package you'll receive a CD. You'll also receive a written report that we call the Agency Growth Ideas Report, just so you'll have every word track, every idea that you hear will be right there at your fingertips. And then we invite every single one of our Mastermind members to participate. We've set up a private discussion forum. And so it's a chance to go in. Everybody who's joined our group is invited to that forum, and you can ask any question you want. And we've had some very lively discussions, and the other agents will answer, and I'll answer. And so it's really an opportunity to hear from the best and just get ideas and you know, bring some outside ideas into your agency. One last thing I'll mention is that there's my email and there's my cell phone, and I would be delighted to chat with anyone. I make this offer very sincerely. If you have a question that you'd like to ask me, or if you get an idea from this and it worked out great, I'd love to hear from you. If you tried one of these ideas and it didn't work as well as you wanted, I'd be happy to be a sounding board for you. And so I make that offer very sincerely, so I hope everybody will take me up on that.
Thanks, Bill. We do have one final question, and the question is, will the recording be available for replay at the NAIFA site? And I'll go ahead and take that one. The answer is yes. The webinar will be available at the NAIFA site. The site is www.naifa.org/archived webinars, and that will be up within 24 hours. We also will be sending an automated email to all of today's webinar participants that will have included in that email the actual URL where you can go to access Bill's recorded webinar. And we have one more question. Are these products, CDs, and books available in electronic downloadable form?
The book is available on Amazon or iTunes, and you can download that as an e-book. The audio CDs are only available in a CD format, and so if you want to listen to it on your iPod, I encourage people just to you know, take the CD, put it in your laptop, and then just download it right to your iTunes and sync it with your iPod, and then you'll have it available that way.
Okay, well, it looks like we don't have any additional questions, so we're going to go ahead and let everyone go just a couple minutes early. Looks like there are no further questions. So I want to thank you, Bill, and thanks to all those who participated in today's program. And again, to access today's presentation and other webinar archive resources, you go to www.naifa.org/archive webinars within the next 24 hours. This is Brendan Burnett for NAIFA. Have a great day.
Thanks.